Before we begin, take a deep breath. You're about to step into stories that don't end when the video does. If you love exploring the dark, subscribe to the channel and keep the light on. And tell us, where are you watching from tonight? What time is it where you are? Because in the world of FearBound stories, the darkness doesn't care what time it is. Now let's begin. Michael never liked being inside the school after sunset. During the day, the halls were filled with noise, laughter, chatter, footsteps pounding across polished linoleum. But once the last bell rang and the students disappeared, the place became something else. The fluorescent lights hummed in a way that made your teeth ache. The silence seemed too heavy, and the shadows grew thicker in the corners, like stains that refused to leave. Still, when the principal asked him to supervise after-school detention, Michael agreed. It was a Tuesday evening in late autumn, the kind of night when the wind seemed to whisper as it pushed against the old building's windows. Only one student was assigned detention that day, a sophomore named Aaron. He was a quiet boy, usually keeping to himself. Michael figured it would be an easy evening. Aaron sat hunched over his desk near the back of the room, pencil scratching faintly across paper. Michael tried to focus on grading assignments, the red pen moving sluggishly as his eyes drifted to the dim hallway outside the classroom door. Every few minutes, the old pipes groaned in the walls, the kind of sound that could almost be mistaken for a sigh. Then it came. Bang! The unmistakable crash of a locker slamming shut reverberated through the hall. Michael's pen froze mid-stroke. Slowly, he looked up, meeting Aaron's wide eyes. The boy gave the faintest nod. He had heard it too. Michael sighed and set his papers aside. He had locked every single locker earlier that afternoon. This shouldn't have been possible. The hallway was darker than it should have been, even with the fluorescent lights buzzing above. The sound of his own footsteps echoed strangely, as though the building had swallowed them and spat them back distorted. His eyes scanned the long row of lockers, identical doors stretching into shadow. All still, except one, locker 117. It sat slightly ajar, the dent in its door like a scar. Michael reached out and touched it. Cold. Too cold for metal indoors. He hesitated, his instincts screaming at him not to open it. Then came the scratching. Faint at first, like nails against a chalkboard, dragging, deliberate, coming from inside. Michael jerked the door open, empty, just a few forgotten books, torn pages curling at the edges. Dust drifted into the air like ash. The smell that wafted out was sour, damp, like earth freshly dug. Shaking his head, he slammed it shut. When he returned to the classroom, his heart stopped. Aaron's seat was empty. His pencil lay broken in two across his desk. His backpack was still on the floor, one strap twisted as if it had been yanked violently. "Aaron?" Michael's voice cracked. It didn't carry like it should have. It sounded smothered, choked by the thick air. The classroom lights flickered, then steadied. The silence pressed in. And then he saw it. At the far end of the hallway, past the stretch of lockers, stood a figure. Small, thin, a child-sized silhouette. The head tilted unnaturally, chin nearly touching its shoulder. It didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared. Michael's throat went dry. "Aaron?" he whispered, though every nerve in his body told him it wasn't Aaron. The figure stepped backward into the shadows, melting into the dark. Michael's fear overrode reason. He sprinted down the hallway, the fluorescent lights above flickering faster the closer he got to the end. The building seemed to stretch, the hallway lengthening, doors multiplying along the walls. He turned a corner, only to find himself back where he started, staring again at locker 117. This time it was wide open. Every single locker door along the hallway creaked open in unison, their hinges groaning like screams. One by one, they slammed shut, louder and louder until the sound was deafening. Michael clutched his ears, staggering. The lights overhead flickered violently, and with each flash he saw glimpses of faces, pale, hollow-eyed children peering out from the dark, pressed against the glass windows of classroom doors. Their mouths were open, but no sound came out. Then everything stopped. Locker 117 stood silent and still. From inside, faintly, came the sound of a boy's voice, trembling, desperate. "Help me." Michael's blood ran cold. He leaned closer, heart hammering, and whispered, "Aaron?" The voice came again, clearer now. "Don't stay after school. They don't let you leave." The locker door slammed shut with such force it nearly crushed his fingers. When the janitor finally found him an hour later, Michael was sitting in the middle of the hallway floor, his face pale, eyes wide and unfocused, staring at locker 117. Aaron was never seen again. His name vanished from the school records, his desk reassigned as if he had never existed at all. But to this day, teachers swear that if you walk the halls after dark, you can hear scratching inside that locker. And if you're foolish enough to open it, you may find a notebook inside. On the last page, scrawled in shaky, uneven handwriting, are the words, "Don't stay after school, you won't leave." The school's old science lab had been abandoned for over 2 decades. A fire had swept through it one night in the mid-90s, leaving charred walls, blackened ceilings, and a faint chemical smell that never truly faded. The district never renovated it. Instead, they locked the door, sealed the windows, and left it as a forgotten scar in the East Wing. But everyone at the school knew the stories. Students whispered that if you passed that corridor after dark, you could hear scratching on the inside of the door. Others swore they heard the hiss of gas burners or the sound of liquid bubbling in beakers that no longer existed. Teachers dismissed it as rumors, but secretly, even the staff avoided walking that hallway once the sun went down. One evening, the drama club stayed late to rehearse for their upcoming play. The janitor had already started shutting off lights in the empty wings. By the time rehearsal ended, it was nearly 9 p.m. The hallways were long, dark, and silent, except for the faint hum of fluorescent bulbs overhead. As the students packed up, one girl, Emily, realized she had left her backpack behind in her homeroom. She didn't want to wait until morning. Against her friend's advice, she dashed back alone, taking what she thought would be the quickest route. That route led her past the East Wing, past the abandoned science lab. The corridor stretched long and narrow, the light at the far end flickering weakly. Emily hugged her arms against her chest, footsteps echoing too loudly on the tiles. She told herself not to look at the lab door, not to listen, but curiosity gnawed at her. That was when she heard it. Clink, clink, the delicate sound of glass beakers knocking together, then the faint, unmistakable hiss of gas burners coming to life. Her heart thudded in her chest. She froze, staring at the heavy wooden door. The room was sealed. No one had entered it in years, and yet through the dust-caked window she saw light, a faint orange glow flickering like fire. She crept closer, her breath fogging the dirty glass as she leaned to peer inside. What she saw made her blood run cold. The lab was alive again. Tables lined with equipment, beakers bubbling, burners flickering, notebooks spread open. Figures in white lab coats bent over their workstations. But they weren't normal. Their movements were stiff, repetitive, like broken marionettes forced to repeat the same tasks. Their faces were blurred, features smeared like wet paint, yet their bodies twitched violently as they stirred invisible chemicals. Emily stumbled back, covering her mouth. The smell hit her then, sharp, acrid. the burning stench of chemicals mixed with something metallic, and then, as though they had all sensed her presence at once, every single figure stopped. Their heads snapped upward, necks twisting at impossible angles until they were staring directly at her through the glass. Emily screamed and bolted down the hallway, her shoes squeaking on the tiles. Behind her, the lab door began to rattle violently, hinges groaning as if something inside was trying to force it open. The clinking of glass grew louder, joined by the sound of liquid boiling over, splashing across unseen surfaces. She sprinted until she burst into the main hallway, gasping for breath. When she looked back, the east wing was still, silent, dark. The lab door stood shut. Her friends laughed nervously when she told them what happened. They said she was overtired, her imagination running wild. But Emily knew what she had seen. For days afterward, she tried to convince herself it was a hallucination. But then, small things began to happen. She'd smell smoke when no one else did. Her notebook pages turned faintly black at the edges, as though singed. And late at night, as she tried to sleep, she sometimes heard the sound of glass clinking together in the silence of her room. The worst came a week later. She opened her locker to grab her books and froze. Sitting neatly on top of her pile of papers was her missing backpack, the one she had left in her homeroom that night. She never retrieved it, because inside, faintly, she could smell chemicals, and when she leaned closer, she swore she heard something sloshing inside, as though a beaker filled with liquid was waiting for her. To this day, the science lab remains locked, but everyone knows the truth. If you walk too close to the door at night, you'll hear the ghosts of experiments that never ended. And if you dare look inside the window, they'll see you too. And once they do, they don't forget. The principal's office in the east wing of the school had been locked for as long as anyone could remember. Most students barely thought about it during the day, but whenever detention ran late or rehearsals stretched into the night, kids would glance at that door with unease. Dust clung to its frame, the glass panel above the handle permanently fogged, the blinds inside always drawn shut. Everyone knew the story. Principal Hargrove had been a strict man, the kind who struck fear in every student he passed in the hall. He ran the school with iron discipline. But one night in the late 1990s, he never went home. They found him dead in his office the next morning, slumped across his desk. The papers said heart attack, but no one believed it. Why? Because the office was in disarray when they found him. The chair overturned, deep scratches along the wood paneling, the blinds torn half off the window. The janitor at the time swore there had been blood on the floor, but the district denied it, calling it coffee stains. Within a week, the office was shut, locked, and left untouched. Decades later, the stories only grew. Students whispered that at night, you could still hear the faint clack of his typewriter keys, even though no machine had been used there in years. Some swore the blinds moved when no wind was present, as if someone was pacing inside. Others said, if you dared lean close enough, you could hear breathing on the other side of the door. By the time Jason and his friends were seniors, the old office had become more legend than reality. And legends are irresistible to bored teenagers. On October night, after yearbook committee finished late, Jason gathered his friends near the east wing. He grinned as he pulled a rusted set of keys from his pocket. "Swiped these from the VP's desk last week," he whispered. "One of them has to fit." His friends laughed nervously. The hallway was already dim, most of the lights buzzing faintly, their edges swallowed by shadow. The air felt colder here, heavier. Still, curiosity outweighed fear. The lock clicked on the third try. The door groaned as Jason pushed it open, a rush of stale air spilling into the corridor. It smelled of mildew, smoke, and something faintly metallic. They stepped inside, phone flashlights cutting through the dark. Dust coated every surface, but the room looked as if it had been frozen in time. A mug with black sludge inside still sat beside a stack of papers. A wall calendar, edges curled with age, displayed the month Hargrove died. Even the chair lay in the same position, slightly askew. "Creepy," one girl muttered, brushing her hand along the bookshelf. Her voice dropped when she noticed deep grooves carved into the wood. "Scratches. These look like fingernails." Jason sat in the principal's chair, spinning slightly. "What's the big deal? It's just an office." He smirked, pretending to mimic Hargrove's gravelly voice. "Detention, Saturday at 8 a.m. The others chuckled nervously, but their eyes kept darting around. That was when the blinds rattled, all at once. Every strip of dusty plastic snapped as though someone had run their hand down them. The sound made their stomachs twist. They froze, the room suddenly colder. Jason was about to laugh it off when one of the boys pointed, voice trembling. That wasn't there before." On the desk sat a piece of paper, crisp, clean, fresh. 3 words scrawled across it in shaky handwriting. "Leave now!" Jason paled, standing abruptly. "Okay, that's enough. Someone's messing with us." But no one else had moved. The blinds shook again, harder. Then the typewriter on the side table came to life. Keys pressed themselves, hammering into the ribbon though no one touched it. The group huddled together, eyes wide as the paper slowly filled with words. "You shouldn't be here." The mug on the desk tipped suddenly, crashing to the floor. The calendar pages flipped violently though the air was still. A low hum filled the room, like static building inside their skulls. And then less breathing. Slow, heavy, coming from the corner behind the filing cabinet. A girl screamed. Jason bolted to the door, twisting the knob, but it wouldn't budge. The lock jammed, trapping them inside. The blinds flared upward, revealing the black window behind them. For a split second, every one of them swore they saw a face in the reflection. Pale, hollow-eyed, watching. Jason rammed the door again and again until it finally gave way. They spilled into the hallway, gasping for air, running without looking back. When they reached the main corridor, the door slammed shut behind them with a force that rattled the walls. They didn't stop running until they were outside in the cold night air. The next day, shaken and pale, Jason told the vice principal what had happened. The man listened in silence, then sighed, glancing toward the east wing. "You're not the first," he said grimly. Jason frowned. "What do you mean?" The VP lowered his voice. "Every few years some kids sneak in. They always come back terrified and they always leave something behind." Jason's stomach dropped. "Leave what behind?" The VP's eyes darkened. The night Hargrove died, he was found clutching a student's backpack. That student was never seen again. And every group that goes in there loses something too. A watch, a phone, sometimes even a friend. Jason couldn't sleep that night. He kept replaying the sound of the typewriter, the breathing, the blinds snapping. Finally, at dawn, he convinced himself it was all a prank, his mind exaggerating. He needed proof. So he returned to school early, walking alone to the east wing. The halls were eerily silent. His palms sweated as he crept to the office and peeked through the blinds. There, sitting neatly on the desk, was his phone, the same one he had dropped in his panic to escape, but next to it lay a fresh piece of paper. Words sprawled across it in ink that looked wet, as if just written, "See you soon." Every school has that one place students avoid, a hallway, a classroom, or a staircase that feels just a little off. At Ridgeway High, it was the restroom in the science wing. It wasn't just superstition. Everyone knew something was wrong there. The stall doors were always crooked. The lights flickered no matter how many times they were replaced. and the air inside was colder, heavier, like stepping into a basement. But it was the last stall on the left that carried the most fear. Whispers said a girl had died there decades ago, taking her life late one night after being caught cheating on an exam. Some claimed she was locked inside, found only the next morning by the janitor, pale and lifeless against the cold tile. Others believed she was never found at all, that her body had simply disappeared, and all that was left was the stall. Generations of students added to the legend. They said if you looked under the stall after dark, you'd see a pair of shoes, white, worn down, facing forward, waiting. Others swore they heard someone humming softly or breathing heavily. And there were always those who claimed the stall sometimes wasn't there, that the restroom shifted, stretching, swallowing it whole until it returned later, darker than before. Most avoided the science wing restroom entirely, but Marcus didn't believe in ghost stories. He was a practical kid, into science, logic, and reason. That night he stayed late for a biology project, the last student left in the building. The janitor's cart squeaked far down the hall, and the rest of the school was silent. By the time Marcus packed his books, the sky outside had turned black, the windows reflecting only the empty, fluorescent-lit corridors. That was when he felt it. The sudden, undeniable urge to use the restroom. The nearest one? Science wing. He hesitated for a moment, remembering the rumors. But he told himself it was nonsense. Just plumbing problems and exaggerations passed from class to class. With a deep breath, he pushed the restroom door open. The hinges screamed louder than they should have. The air inside was freezing, colder than the rest of the building. His breath fogged as he stepped in. The lights flickered overhead, buzzing faintly, casting shadows that seemed to crawl across the walls. He walked past the sinks. Cracked mirrors stared back at him, warped slightly, as if his reflection wasn't quite right. One of the faucets dripped steadily, though the handles were turned tight. The sound echoed through the empty room. He moved toward the stalls. Each door hung crooked, the locks rusted and stiff. He counted them automatically, 1, 2, 3, 4, until his eyes landed on the last stall. The door was shut. Beneath it he saw feet. 2 pale, thin feet motionless on the tile. Marcus froze. His throat went dry. "Sorry," he muttered softly, assuming someone was inside. No reply. The feet didn't shift, didn't flinch. Uneasy, Marcus slipped into the stall beside it. The graffiti scrawled on the walls caught his attention. Layered messages carved and written over decades. Names, dates. But one phrase stood out, written in thick, uneven letters. "Don't look under." Marcus tried to ignore it, but then he heard it, breathing. Slow, uneven, coming from the stall next to him. His heart pounded. He leaned forward, pressing his eye to the crack in the stall door. The feet were still there, perfectly still. But as he stared, the breathing stopped. The silence was worse. Then, without a sound, the feet vanished. Just gone. The stall door was still shut. The lock still bolted. But no one was inside. Marcus stood quickly, fumbling with the latch. He shoved the door open, stumbling into the restroom. His hands shook as he looked toward the last stall. The feet were gone. The silence pressed down on him, suffocating. And then the stall door slammed open. The sound echoed like a gunshot. The stall yawned wide, its interior blacker than the rest of the restroom. A heavy drip echoed from within. Marcus's eyes widened as hands emerged. Pale, waterlogged, fingers too long, nails cracked and jagged. They clutched the doorframe, pulling something forward. A head leaned out, gaunt, hollow-eyed, skin slick, sagging as though soaked for days. Its lips hung open, dripping black water onto the floor. The smell of mildew and rot filled the air. Marcus stumbled back, his shoes skidding across the tiles. The figure dragged itself out of the stall, movements jerky, unnatural, like something learning how to walk again. Its wet hair clung to its face, and its hollow eyes locked on his. It began to crawl forward. Marcus bolted for the exit. He yanked the restroom door open, the hinges groaning, and sprinted down the hallway, heart hammering in his chest. Behind him, he heard the sound of water splashing, echoing footsteps that didn't quite match his own. When he finally dared to look back, the restroom door was slowly swinging shut. He didn't stop running until he was outside, gulping down the cold night air, his body trembling violently. The next morning, his biology teacher found Marcus's project papers scattered across the science wing floor. His backpack was missing. When students asked about him, the school said Marcus had transferred unexpectedly. But no paperwork was filed. His desk was reassigned within a week, as though he'd never been there at all. A month later, the janitor opened the science wing restroom to mop and froze. Sitting neatly inside the last stall on the left was Marcus's backpack. It was soaked through with foul, dark water, and scratched faintly into the stall door above it were 4 new words. "I'm still here." Every old school has secrets hidden in its bones. Locked rooms, boarded windows, or places no one dares enter. At Ridgeway High, the greatest secret was the attic above the library. It wasn't even supposed to exist. The blueprints never mentioned it, and most students didn't believe it was real. But the older janitors, the ones who had been around for decades, would glance nervously at the ceiling when asked and mutter, "Some doors stay shut for a reason." The door to the attic was concealed behind a heavy wooden panel high on the wall, sealed with an iron padlock. For years it stayed closed. Still, whispers circulated. Some said the attic once stored old lab chemicals, and an accident caused a fire that killed several students who had been sneaking up there. Others claimed the fire was no accident, that a teacher had locked misbehaving children inside as punishment, and by the time anyone smelled the smoke, it was too late. The records listed it only as a structural fire, but the scorch marks on the beams above the library ceiling remained, and students swore they could still smell smoke when the rain poured outside. On a stormy October evening, Lila, a quiet sophomore, stayed late in the library to finish a history essay. She loved the quiet, the rain tapping against the tall arched windows, the smell of paper and dust. The librarian had gone home early, leaving her completely alone. That's when she noticed it. The attic panel in the corner was hanging slightly open. The padlock lay on the ground, rusted, its shackle bent as if it had been forced. Her stomach tightened. She should have left it alone. But curiosity is louder than fear. She pulled a chair beneath the opening, climbed up, and pushed the panel wider. A rush of icy air spilled out, carrying the bitter scent of charred wood and wet ash. She raised her phone flashlight and her heart skipped. A staircase stretched upward into darkness. Step by step she climbed. The wood groaned beneath her feet, each creak echoing through the silence. The air grew colder, denser, until it felt like she was wading into water. At the top, her beam revealed a wide attic space filled with broken furniture. Desks stacked on top of one another, shattered glass cases, and old chalkboards leaning against the walls. Dust coated everything, thick as snow. But what caught her attention most were the books. Hundreds of charred pages lay scattered across the floor, blackened edges curling upward as though the fire had just licked them. She bent down and picked one up. The ink was smudged, but visible. It was a math textbook from the 1960s, its cover half burned. That's when she heard it. A whisper, so soft she thought it was the storm outside. But then it came again. "Help us!" Her blood froze. She spun her light toward the sound. nothing but broken desks. "Hello?" she whispered. Silence, then another voice, high-pitched, childlike. "Don't leave us." Her pulse quickened. She took a shaky step backward. Her flashlight flickered. The attic dimmed, shadows stretching unnaturally across the walls. And then the smell hit her. Thick smoke, sharp and acrid, filling her lungs. Her eyes watered as the air grew heavy with invisible flames. The whispers rose, overlapping now, dozens of voices crying in agony. "It's hot. It burns. We can't breathe." Lila choked, stumbling as her vision blurred. Suddenly, the footsteps began. Light, rapid. The sound of many children running across the wooden boards, circling her in the dark. Pitter-patter, pitter-patter. She spun in every direction, her beam of light barely piercing the gloom. Her flashlight flickered again, and in that split second of light, she saw them. Figures. Small, charred silhouettes standing just beyond the glow. Their skin cracked and blackened, their clothes burned into tatters. Embers glowed in the hollow sockets of their eyes. Their mouths were open in silent screams, teeth flashing against the dark. The light went out. The screams began, the attic filled with a deafening chorus of shrieks. Some sounded like children crying. Others were guttural, inhuman. Lila stumbled back, clutching her throat as smoke seared her lungs. Her phone light sputtered back to life just as one of them crawled forward. Its limbs were twisted at odd angles, bones jutting unnaturally. Its fingers stretched toward her, leaving trails of ash on the dusty floor. Its head lolled sideways, mouth opening wide to release a sound that was both a sob and a roar. More figures moved closer. Some crawled on all fours, their bodies bending like broken dolls. Others towered unnaturally tall, shadows stretching toward the ceiling. One pressed its face close to hers. She could see the blackened skin cracking, glowing faintly red beneath like embers inside a dying log. It whispered, "Why didn't you save us?" Lila screamed and bolted for the stairs. Her phone fell from her hand, clattering across the floor. The light spun wildly, illuminating dozens of hands reaching after her. She tumbled down the staircase, nearly breaking her ankle, and shoved the panel shut behind her with all her strength. The library was dead silent again. The storm outside had softened, the air calm. But she could still hear it, faint tapping above the ceiling. Footsteps. The next morning, the librarian found Lila's notebook lying on the floor beneath the attic panel. Its pages were scorched, edges blackened as though it had been caught in a fire. Lila herself never returned to Ridgeway High. Her parents claimed she had been transferred to a private school, but no transfer documents were filed. Teachers quietly packed away her things, and within weeks, her name was erased from the attendance rolls. But her best friend swore she saw her one more time. Late at night, walking past the library, she glanced up through the tall windows and saw a pale face staring down from the attic window. Lila's face. Her eyes hollow, her mouth moving in silence, mouthing the words, "Help us." You've just crossed the boundary between reality and the unknown. If you felt the fear tonight, make sure to subscribe before you leave, because on this channel every story is just the beginning. New nightmares arrive every few nights, each one darker than the last. Until then, keep your lights low, your doors locked, and your mind open. You are now part of the FearBound family.